There's one UFC bet that hits 85% of the time, and it's not a money line or a parlay. It's a structural bet that almost nobody runs the math on correctly. I built a system around it 3 years ago. It hits 85% when 4 filters all line up. It's available on almost every UFC card, and it's sitting at your sportsbook screen right now. I'm going to walk you through every filter, the exact math behind the win rate, and the 5 fight types that you need to skip even if everything else looks right. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to scan a UFC card in seconds and find every qualifying play. Let me explain why most UFC bettors lose money before I tell you what works. Mistake number 1, they bet money lines on the wrong side. UFC money lines look like soccer or basketball lines, but they don't behave the same way. UFC is one of the highest variance sports in the world. A fighter can dominate 4 rounds and lose the 5th to a single counterpunch. Heavy favorites get clipped all the time. Underdogs catch lightning in a bottle. The money line doesn't capture any of that. You bet a minus 300 favorite, they can literally be winning the whole fight, and then one mistake, and you end up losing that. Mistake number 2, they build parlays, 6-leg parlays across one card, with the champion plus the contender, plus prelim favorite, plus method of victory props. The book holds 25% on those. You're paying a quarter of every dollar to the house. The math doesn't work. Mistake number 3, and this is the one that costs the most money. They bet method of victory props on individual fighters. Fighter X to win by K is a tempting bet because the book prices it at plus 200 or better. The problem is you're betting against 3 different outcomes. The fighter has to win, and they have to win specifically by knockout. Strip out the money line portion of that probability, and the standalone by KO probability is much smaller than people think. There's a smarter version of betting finishes. Instead of picking which fighter wins by KO, you bet that the fight ends before the final bell. Either fighter KO, TKO, or submission, you take the yes finish, without locking yourself into which guy. That's the bet. Fight does not go the distance. On the right matchups, with the right filters, it hits 85% of the time. And here's the system. The math behind finish betting is straightforward when you understand the underlying data. In the UFC across the last 10 years, roughly 55% of the fights end before the final bell. Decisions are 45%. So the unfiltered fight does not go the distance bet sits at about 55% true probability. Books price that around minus 130 to minus 150 depending on the matchup. So the edge is thin. But that 55% rate averages all weight class, all fighter styles, all matchup types. Some fights are practically guaranteed to finish. 2 heavy hands meeting in the middle, 2 finish rate specialists who refuse to wrestle, 2 fighters who have never seen a decision in their careers. Those fight hit at 85% or higher historically. The books know this and adjust the price usually to minus 250 or even higher. But the adjustment doesn't always go far enough. When the true probability is 85 to 88% and the book sits at minus 250, which is implied probability 71%, that's a 17-point edge right there. Compounded across multiple cards and you have a real strategy. And this filter is the one that finds those fights. Let's go ahead and start with the first filter here. Okay, the first filter is going to be the book's formation. Now, what does that mean? The book's confirmation, what we need here is we need the total rounds that the sportsbook gives you, the over-under for that, okay, to be at least 1.5. Now, most fights, when you go and look on a card, you're going to see this line right here is going to be 2.5, okay? We are looking for the 1.5 that the sportsbook's going to give you. That's going to be our first filter, and that's going to limit you down to just a couple fights, just that filter right there. Now, the reason behind this is when the book sets the line at 1.5, that's a structural signal. The book itself expects the fight to end fast. The lower line is the book sharing your edge before you even looked at the fighters. If the rounds line is 2.5 or higher, then we just skip it. The book is signaling and expects this fight to be a little bit longer and possibly thinks that it's going to go the distance. Now let's go ahead and get to filter number 2. This is going to be the finish rate. Both fighters in the matchup, okay, both of them need to have an 80% finishing rate. And that needs to be calculated from 8 or more fights. Because here's the math on that. Finish rate equals total fights minus decisions. So let's say, for example, a fighter has 12 pro fights and 2 of them wins a decision. Well, the finish rate is 10 divided by 12. That's 83%. That would pass. The 8-fight minimum matters. A fighter with 3 wins all by knockout and has a 100% finish rate, the sample size is just too small there. You don't have enough data to trust the rate. 8 fights is the floor where the pattern starts to mean something. If either fighter is below 80% or has fewer than 8 fights, then we skip that. Now let's go ahead and get to filter number 3. This is going to be the base probability and correlation filter. This is the math that produces your 80+% true probability number. So first, calculate the finish rate for each fighter. Take the lower of the 2 numbers, that's your base probability. Then add a correlation bonus based on both fighters' rates. If both fighters are at 80 to 84%, then you add 2 percentage points. If one fighter is at 85% and the other is at 80 to 84, then you add 1 percentage point. The bonus exists because 2 finishers fighting each other don't operate independently. When both guys want the finish, both guys take risks. Both guys swing for power, both guys hunt for the submission. The probability of a finish increases beyond what either fighter's individual rate would suggest because the styles compound. Let's go ahead and run through an example of this. We're going to say fighter A and fighter B. Say fighter A, finishing rate 88%. Fighter B, 82%. Lower of the 2 is 82%. Both qualify. One at 85% plus and the other at 80 to 84% plus 1 point. Now it gives us a true probability of 80%. 83%. Now let's go ahead and get to filter number 4, which is going to be the edge. The book's price on this has to be between minus 250 to minus 500. So we're going to write that down. Minus 250 to minus 500. That gives us an implied probability range between 71% to 83%. Now the reason why we want to stay in this range is because essentially what we're going to be looking at here is implied probability versus true probability, where the true probability lies for the fight to not go the distance between 85% to 88%. Now that's not a limit right there, okay? There's some that could be higher than 88%, but I'm just using that as an example of where we could be within and why we would put it at that number, because we still have an edge even at a minus 500 here, depending on where we land. Obviously, if the odds are lower, we're going to have a bigger gap for a bigger edge, but this is the limit we need to be at to be able to still have an edge regardless. Because sometimes you will see a fight that goes through the first couple filters here, but the odds are going to be like minus 1400, something like that. Why? Because you got two heavyweights that are never going to make it, you know, past the second or third round. So they'll price that accordingly, and yeah, that will win probably most of the time. But the thing is you probably won't even have an edge on that. And long term, that'll just create a negative edge, and we don't really want to be in that category. Yes, maybe you'll win if you get lucky on that one and just throw it in there. But there's no reason to do that because we're looking for long-term value here and something that we're going to create long-term so we could use every UFC card, not just one time. Now, even if a fight passes all 4 filters, you skip it if any of the following I'm about to show you applies. One is going to be a debut fighter, okay? We don't want a debut fighter because the record could be misleading and come from a regional promotion that you can't verify. Regional records inflate finish rates because the competition is weaker. Wait until a fighter has at least 3 UFC bouts before trusting the rate. Next thing is going to be either fighter to be out of competition 18 or more months. Because the ring rust is real. Finish-focused fighters lose timing for the match becomes more likely to grind to a decision if they're coming off a huge layoff. The next thing is going to be either fighter misses weight. Missed weight signals a bad camp, depleted fighter, or poor preparation. None of those lead to clean finishes. The next thing, and this one's kind of rare, but the fight ends up being a catch weight. And a catch weight happens when one fighter can't make the contracted weight. Same problem as the missed weight, so we end up skipping that one. These exclusions catch about 15% of the fights that would otherwise pass the filters. Skipping them protects your win rate. So remember, don't skip the exclusions just to chase volume. Now, when I backtested this system across UFC cards, from the qualifying fights numbered 47 across all those years. Of those 47 fights, 40 ended by the final belt. That's 85%. The 7 losses broke down predictably. 3 were grinder decisions where one fighter changed his style and went to wrestling. 2 of those were technical decisions after one fighter got cut and had to manage damage. And 1 was a fight stopped early due to an injury and it was ended up ruled a no contest. Technically, that's not a loss, but didn't satisfy the over either. And one of those fights where both guys ended up canceling each other out and basically just circled around for 15 minutes. Across those 47 bets, at an average price of minus 210, my ROI for that was approximately 18%. Now, it's not life-changing money on a per-card basis, but run consistently across 60 UFC cards a year, sized 1 to 2% of your bankroll, and the compounding adds up. The UFC runs 40-plus cards per year. Numbered events, fight nights, all that stuff. Now, you might not find one on every single card, but when you do, you're more likely than any other bet on the card to win, and that's where your edge lies in UFC. So as long as you're patient and wait for all the filters to hit in one of those fights, it takes the guessing out of the game of, are you going to win betting on this fight or not? Because you're going to expect to win when you apply all those filters. Now, you could do all these filters manually before a UFC card, and it might take you, I'd say, probably about 3 to 4 hours. But luckily, you could use the Linemaker AI, which I designed to literally pump out in seconds which fights qualify for the filters that I just taught you. So all you have to do is just type the filters into the Linemaker AI and it'll spit out within 5 to 10 seconds which fights qualify for you to be able to make a bet on. Now, if you guys want a free trial to see exactly how that works and see how other people are winning, just like this guy right here, make sure you guys click the link in the description because it takes the guesswork out of any bet that you're going to place. And it's like having a handicapper literally in your pocket to tell you if a bet that you're going to make is the right one or not. As always, I'm Frank from Linemaker Sports. I'll see you guys in the next video. Till then, I'm out.